For instance, I had to, and it was almost like in my district, in promoting the bond proposal, which would have benefited greatly, but a lot of misguided information was out there in the public. But I tried to get them to understand that the reason that the MLK community specifically was in the same condition that it was 20 years ago, and some instances 40 years ago, is because there was nothing in the budget in the bond proposal that would have addressed the capital improvements that they were desiring. If it's not in the bond proposal, it doesn't get addressed. And yet they was blaming administration after administration for what had not happened, and it did not happen because, for whatever reason, it was not a part of the last, I know, 2 bond proposals when it came to capital improvements, and in rejection of their desire to say, I'm not going to vote for this. It was almost akin to, I don't want to hear the facts, my mind is already made up. And once again, we are in the same quagmire, because as time moves on, we're not, if the streets are bad, if the drainage is bad, if the conditions of our city is bad, it's going to be bad for a long time because of our rejection of the previous bond proposal. And so it is with economic development. This council is not responsible for losing 20,000 blue-collar jobs over the last 20 years. We lost General Motors, we lost General Electric, Lucian Technology, we lost Google Battery. We have lost, if I counted them up, over 20,000 blue-collar jobs. We can't use legislation to hire 20,000 people. We have to create a city, a climate in this city that would make it appealing for business development to come. And that's why I was talking to the chief and the assistant chief and the deputy chief, is that the crime element and some other plight and issues has to be cultivated so that we can plant great things for this city for the future. It don't happen by happenstance. It got to happen by us creating those opportunities to make job development. So the proposition, not the proposition, but the meeting that I'm holding for the Gateway Consortium Group in regards to Cross Bayou Project. They came before, we had, in the last 3 years, for the new council members, we had 2 presentations regarding the Cross Bayou area. Mayor Tyler had some representatives come forward. I think it was out of Alabama, I think. Birmingham. Yeah. They made a very aggressive pitch for that use of that property. They had in it a sports initiative, but that problem was, and the council rejected that idea because they wanted $30 billion of funds that we couldn't find. But the problem is throughout what we experience, and I don't know if you guys are experiencing, is that regardless of what we bring forward to be considered before this city, there is chitter chatter starts immediately on why we shouldn't do something. We can't do that. We shouldn't do that. It's a con job. It's a this job. It's a that job. And I said over and over again, in Shreveport, Louisiana, on this day of 2019, there's not one crane that's putting up a capital project in the city limits of Shreveport. Not one. You go to some other cities our size, you got cranes everywhere, building skyscrapers. But the economic condition of our city right now is not there. So what do? We got to be open-minded. We got to hear and consider. I have made no deals with nobody about anything. I say, listen, 18 months ago, this group came before this council. The minutes were reflected. And I'm trusting, Jackie, that you would make sure that all council members get a copy of those minutes, where they made a proposal to this city, and this council, the previous council said, listen, we've heard this before. Okay, now you go out and you put together a presentation that would leave no questions unanswered. So we entered into a non-binding memorandum of understanding so that they would have leverage when they went back to solicit and seek the investment and the participation that we would want to consider if we're going to enter into a binding agreement. And they said they're prepared to do that. And I want you to come hear them. Okay, let's see what they have to say. It's got to go through scrutiny. It's got to be scrutinized. It's got to go through all the aspects of what this government would desire, because again, we are going to be responsible for entering into anything. But I'm saying again, if we're not comfortable with it, we're going to tell this group the same thing we told the group that Mayor Tyler brought forward. Thank you, but no thank you. We don't see all the answers that we need to make this type of commitment. So I'm just saying, I think we owe it to ourselves, not to say no to everything, not to reject everything that may come to us. Sometimes it could be disguised as something one way, but it could be real. I remember the guy who founded McDonald's into some other business development where he brought it forth many times before it was accepted to the public. We got to have some economic development. We need jobs. We need jobs. And at the same time, yesterday, I got a group out of Allendale promoting that we do not need I-49 through the city, a $800 million project that would stimulate the economy of Shreveport, saying we don't want that. We don't want that. When NLCOG, the Louisiana Highway Department, our legislatures have put through appropriations of $100 million that's right now levied toward this project, and with our U.S. senators who's saying, and we met with them, who's saying we feel like through the National Highway Bill, we should be able to get the remaining $500 or $600 million to make this happen. The environmental studies has been done. Most of the preliminary work has been done. But yet we got people in Shreveport saying we do not want a $800 million stimulus. We do not want a projected $1 billion project to our city that would almost refashion our city, because y'all do know now we are the second largest city in Louisiana after what happened in Baton Rouge back in October. And some claims even now, you saw them, that are we setting ourselves up for a split in Shreveport 10 years from now, where the Southern Loop area would be petitioning themselves to disannex. We don't have time no more for shucking and jiving. You heard the cries from our citizens today. this council got to have some courage. 57% of the citizens of Shreveport live on or below the poverty level. The 2018 Alice report. That's unbelievable. And the only way we can make a difference in addressing that horrible statistic is that we got to create economic for our citizens. If you are available, council members as well as the public, let's get information by coming out on next Monday at 2 p.m. and let's hear a presentation that we can vet, and if this council sees the opportunity, we'll act appropriately. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Bradford. Councilman Green.
Thank you, I'd just like to recognize Ms. Gloria Lee from District Health, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Lee, glad to have you here. Councilman Nicholson.
Mr. Chairman, if this is a convenient time, I'd like to ask Chief Raymond to address the council briefly regarding the spate of shootings that we've had in the police department's plan for addressing that crime wave. And I will say as he walks up that I appreciated Councilman Bradford's remark earlier in this meeting that part of good policing is aggressive policing. Community-oriented policing is important for establishing relationships with law-abiding citizens, but there is an element of this community and every community that is not law-abiding, that does not have the best interest of other citizens of this community at heart, and so I appreciate that we all recognize that as to those hardened criminals, people who do things like murder a 2-year-old, which happened recently, or shoot a 6-year-old, those people need to be dealt with decisively and aggressively, and they need to be sent to prison. So, Chief Raymond, if you could please give us your thoughts.
Certainly. Thank you, Councilman Nicholson, and the Mayor, and other council members. I prepared some information, and I want to try to share what we've initiated within the last 72 hours. Some of the plans going forward to address the rash of shootings we've had since Friday of last week. But I want to do that without sharing too much information that would affect our investigative and proactive efforts. So hope you understand that. First thing we've done is our street level interdiction unit is mainly a uniformed unit in that they are proactively policing the area. They also work investigative, small investigations, smaller scale investigations. We have them assigned to street duties where they are proactively enforcing suspicious vehicles, stopping suspicious persons, utilizing the methods allowed by law to try, specifically those areas where we've seen these rash of shootings, to try to decrease criminal activity and get violent offenders and get illegal weapons off the street. They're doing that somewhat in unison with our investigative division as the investigators develop suspects, both from the shootings that have occurred as well as who we believe to be potential suspects for future shootings based on their ties to family members and friends, to try to target some of those people, again, to prevent them from becoming either suspects or victims of future shootings. We've also created a special operation several nights a week based on those crime stats where you have overtime paid uniformed officers, so visible presence doing the same thing that street level unit is doing, stopping suspicious people, suspicious persons, and just deterring crime. The robbery intervention detail that has been ongoing since Halloween, that's addressing a specific element of violent crime, but certainly they're on these streets, and those are the same investigators that typically work homicide and robbery investigations. As a matter of fact, they were working the detail when the shooting in Cherokee Park went out 2 days ago, and were able to immediately respond and address that problem. So that's plainclothes officers primarily on the street in what we may consider undercover capacity. So they're not in marked units, but that does provide a beneficial element when we're talking about some of these violent crimes. We've also got some cohesion, working with some of our other law enforcement partners such as probation and parole, state police, Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, to address particular criminals that we know are committing some of these crimes, we believe are committing some of these crimes. And again, if they're violating probation and parole, we've got some commitments from them to revoke their parole or probation, whichever it may be, to try to get those individuals off the streets, as well as some increased presence from uniformed state police and Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. We recently added the state police to our major notification. I know the council members are part of that group, so that when we have crimes occur in the city, such as a shooting or a major incident like a robbery, that information will be immediately dispatched to the troopers that are working our area. I talked to Captain Cordell Williams a couple of times over the last week, and he's told me about the increase of troopers that they've had in our area, and that it would be beneficial for them to find out about those incidents as soon as they occur. And I agree, so we're taking means to include more of his investigative divisions in getting those major notifications so they can be of assistance. Councilman Nicholson also asked me about the violent crime units and task forces we're a part of. We have one officer assigned to the U.S. Marshals Service Violent Offender Task Force, which are primarily utilized when we have a warrant for a suspect. They often are called to take that person into custody. We have two officers assigned rather, to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, and again, they focus their efforts on violent crimes and drug organizations, which you may refer to as a gang. We have one agent assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration. As a matter of fact, last night or the night before, my days run together, they were instrumental in assisting the street level interdiction unit. We got 2 kilograms of cocaine off the streets of Shreveport. 2 kilograms of cocaine is a large amount of narcotics for this area, and made an arrest as well. We have 2 agents assigned to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They've been instrumental in the Project Safe Neighborhoods grant that the U.S. Attorney Office assists us with, in which cases in which we would we get stiffer sentences in the federal jurisdiction versus state jurisdiction. The Project Safe Neighborhoods grant is used to try those suspects federally, where they get sentenced to crimes that don't have the benefit of probation and parole. So it's an asset to us to get those people off the street. And then we also have an officer assigned to the Homeland Security Investigations, which was part of that group where we seized over $1 million in marijuana the other day. They also assist in any investigation that crosses state line and primarily focus their efforts on violent criminals. Councilman Nicholson asked me about any needs that we might have as a police department, and I just want to kind of briefly name a few. One is certainly pay raises, and the benefit of pay raises that we keep some of our well-trained veteran officers. We have lost, and I wish I had the exact number with me, historically we lose about 3 officers a month, 36 a year, due to resignations, retirements, and terminations. This year we've already lost close to 40, and the year's not over. I know several pending retirements at the end of the year. But a large portion of those have not been resignations or terminations, not been retirements or terminations. They've been officers resigning to go to other local agencies where they feel that they have better benefit packages. So anything we could do to compete by keeping those trained officers here, and also to try to draw officers from some of those other agencies to the Shreveport Police Department in the form of lateral transfers would be very beneficial. Also money for vehicles, which I discussed last week at the council review sessions. We're in dire need for new police vehicles to replace some of our aging fleet. That would save money in maintenance costs. It would also prevent so many vehicles being down for preventive maintenance. Ideally, I'd like to improve or increase the size of our at-home storage units or take-home vehicles, so that we actually have more vehicles in the neighborhoods being driven by officers that live in the city of Shreveport. That's going to help aid in that crime and deterrent effect. You also are encouraging officers to be in those vehicles and prepared to respond to crimes even if they aren't on duty. And then the third thing I would discuss, and I actually have a group here, Chief Mitchell's had a lot of conversation about this. We have a couple of detectives from our Violent Crimes Unit and White Collar Crimes Task Force. We would like to start a digital forensics lab and utilize personnel already within our investigative division to run that unit. So many of our crimes these days are being solved using cell phones, computers, and digital evidence. We don't have those assets on the Shreveport Police Department, so we generally have to go to other agencies and borrow their equipment and their software. And we would like to purchase some of that equipment for the Shreveport Police Department, albeit with the largest agency in Northwest Louisiana, and we utilize that equipment more than the other agencies. So those are ways in which the council could help to move funding around, or when we have these specific requests for funding, that they could assist in, decreasing the crime. And then the final thing I'd like to say is that the police officers, all our officers, are doing a really good job. And again, I don't want to talk about crime going down, I don't want to talk about stats, but I will say that we have got to have more support from the community. If Bob wants to go kill Joe, and police officers don't know that Bob wants to kill Joe, Bob's gonna leave his house, find a gun, and go shoot at Joe before we know about it. And the only way to prevent that is for a family member, for a friend, for someone that saw a Facebook post, to call the police and say, hey, Bob's mad at Joe, he's got a gun, this is where we believe Joe is, we need to stop him. It doesn't, it doesn't benefit our violent crime rate even after the fact. To solve that crime, we need to prevent that crime, and that's gonna take community involvement. There are very, very few violent crimes that there's not someone else that knows it's going to occur, or at least would have a pretty good idea that we're heading in that direction. And it's incumbent upon us as citizens to make sure that that information gets to the police department if you're not able to stop it, within your own circle of friends.
Chief, thank you for that report. Nobody has got a tougher or more important job than you and your officers that keep this city safe every day. On behalf of the council, I thank every one of your officers. I in particular extend thanks to the officers who are involved in the most dangerous work that the Shreveport Police Department does, including the street level interdiction unit, the robbery unit, the officers who are involved in the various federal task forces. That is dangerous work, and those men and women are literally risking their lives when they go on duty to do things like execute warrants against violent criminals. So the events of the past 10 days or so are really a reminder of how important the work of those men and women is. I will be proposing a series of amendments to the proposed budget that will devote additional resources to the Shreveport Police Department. We can delay and put off a lot of things. The city will not grind to a halt if we don't have new playground equipment, or if we don't repave a street that's not quite as in good a shape as we wish it would. But if we don't take care of our police officers, if we don't pay them fairly, if we don't do things like provide them digital forensic software so that they can do their job and solve crime in 2019, that will have immediate negative and dangerous consequences to this community. And so I hope that my colleagues will join me in doing everything we can within the constraint of our budget to support the Shreveport Police Department and Chief Raymond. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Chief, we got Councilman Green.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman, were you saying we can delay the funds for Night Street and get to the?
Well, not that, Councilman Green, no, no. I was talking about somebody else's district.
Of course, Chief, thank y'all for all the work that you're doing. But I got a lot of calls on yesterday evening about a terrible accident was at St. Vincent in 84. Do you know if we had any fatalities there or anybody seriously injured? I got a lot of calls.
We did not have any fatalities. I can't speak to injuries. The most recent traffic fatality was the one on MLK Monday night, I believe.
Okay. Is there any way you could?
I can certainly get some information to you as far as exactly what the injuries were. Yes, sir.
I
Certainly.
appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
All
Thank you, Mr. Chief.
right, Councilman Bradford.
How you doing, Chief?
Well, sir. Thank you.
Chief, let me first thank you for your personal presence up in my district on last Thursday. I think your presence made a difference in the attitude that they left there with. I mean, I thought you was very helpful in giving them some directions on how they could respond to that shooting. Are you aware, and I got a couple of questions about it, but are you aware, have you heard that the young man that got killed, the victim, were you aware that his girlfriend worked at the store? Were you aware of that?
I was.
You was aware, okay. I just wanted, okay, because again, the challenges that we had at that meeting, and we keep having, and I think it's been alluded to throughout the day, there was at least 5 witnesses to that incident. And yet, nobody told you nothing, right? Nobody told you nothing.
Nobody told us what we believe to be the truth.
Okay, what you be true. And I'm saying again, and we expressed it to the community as well, that we can't effectively police and protect a community if people see things or know things and won't tell the police things.
That's correct, yes, sir.
I don't know how we expect to get that done.
Well, and you know, another valid point is well, I guess it's not another point, but the community is overly concerned or very concerned about violent crime, as they should be.
Sure.
But really at this point, a lot of these problems are a community problem because we don't get the support that we need in order to solve some of these crimes. When you have witnesses to crimes that don't come forward, that's detrimental to the police department. Even if we have other evidence, it's very difficult to get a conviction if we've got people on scene that can't corroborate the evidence that we were able to ascertain through our investigative techniques. So you really got to have that element of people talking to the police department and willing to come forward and state what they saw.
Yeah. So, my last statement before I get to a question that I think Councilman Nicholson will want to respond to as well. There's no respect of crime in Shreveport, okay? The criminal element was 2 doors away from my house on Friday, okay? I don't know if you're familiar with that there was an incident on Greenwood Road in Curtis Lane that led to my neighbor's house. And I don't even know what happened. I really don't. But I just wanted everybody to know that there's no respect for neighborhoods. There's no respect for personalities. In a violent society, crime breeds crime. That's why we need policing. That's why we need residential and citizens to help. Now, my question is this. What do living within your means to you? In your household, do you live within your means?
We do.
Now, you articulated a list of needs that you feel would be worthy of resources that's worthy of your department. I agree. The budget hearings reveal and expose a lot of our weaknesses, a lot of our needs, and a lot of the needs, again, and my frustration is still yet, that the bond proposal would have taken us a long way down the road. Now we're trying to repurpose some funds to get to what we need to do. And I'm gonna be open to Councilman Nicholson's proposals, amendments, because I think we need to do that. But at the same time, I'm very cautious that we live within our means. If we can't afford cars, we just can't afford cars. We have to make, put a gasket on and keep driving. We can't go out and obligate ourselves at a level beyond what we have the ability to do at this time. You agree with that?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay. So, and I'm gonna just throw this in. Through those 2 days of budget hearings, you know what disturbed me the most? It wasn't your presentation, even though your presentation was an excellent presentation. But what disturbed me the most was Patrick Farlow's presentation. And saying that we cannot recruit quality engineers to this city, and that some of our major projects could be at risk because we can't get the quality of engineers here to help supervise those projects through. That's dangerous. That's dangerous, and not having the capacity to bring the best that we can bring to help make this city the best we can make it is a paramount of concern to me. I keep using my day job, but we put the resources to make us the number one what we do. But at the same time, we live within our means, and we try to cross-train we try to invest in our people by educating them in the field that we want them to be in, and not having to always go outside of our preview to get good quality people. So there's a lot of parts to this that work it, but more importantly, we're gonna have to, regardless of the proposals or amendments that may be forthcoming, because again, we won't be able to do everything that we need to do. I mean, we can't go out and create some monies. We're gonna have to take from Peter and pay Paul. Is that right, Mayor? If we're gonna make some amendments, is that the way it's gonna have to happen?
Yeah, if we're truly gonna keep a balanced budget, we'll definitely be stealing from Peter to.
That's what I'm saying. If we wanna keep a reserve, we got a low reserve.
Absolutely.
But you proposed your executive budget that was balanced.
Absolutely.
And if there was some more money somewhere, you'd have included in your budget.
Yes, there is no more money anywhere.
So if we are to make some modifications, it's gonna be taken from Peter and paying Paul. Is that the way it's gonna work?
Yeah, the money would have to come from another department.
Okay.
I mean, the only other place is going into the reserve, but, you know, Councilman Nicholson, you've expressed that you don't want to go into the reserve that we've allocated. And we have a very modest reserve. You know, I'll be the first person to say that, but we also started the year off over $1 million in the hole. So climbing out of that hole and creating that modest reserve and keeping everything else flat was very difficult, but we are there. So if we are to modify anything, then we're gonna be stealing from another department to do so.
Well, we're gonna do our best to do what we can do. Like, I agree, if I had a choice between driving on a pothole or versus having police to be available when I need them, I think I can tolerate a few more potholes. But at the same time, Mayor, let me just say this to you and the chief. I wanna sort of, well, I don't wanna do that, but let me just say this. You inherited, you've been in office for 11 months and some days. You've been the chief for a few months.
A little over a year.
Okay. You inherited some very far-reaching situations that you didn't create. You didn't create it, but yet you're getting blamed for what you created. I guess it comes with the territory, okay? I am an effective manager. I made a very good living managing because I like to manage my issues and not create something that I don't have to create. But I also have a very serious problem with somebody blaming me for what somebody else didn't, what somebody else did. I have a real serious problem. I take responsibility. I love to be held accountable, but I can't take responsibility for something that I didn't create. And I hate that, but again, you're the chief, you're the mayor, that comes with that. So be comfortable in knowing that we're here to support you. We're here to do what we can do. But we gotta live within our means. We got to live within our means. I don't know. I promise you, my wife want a new car, but she's not gonna get a new car this year because we're gonna live within our means.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to add on to that, real brief, that I spoke to Chief as well, and just to let him know that I support SPD just as, I mean, I think probably I breathed in hard, probably harder than anyone else up here, I know, along with Councilman Bradford, but I just, whatever we can do, we're gonna try to do what we can
Yes, sir.
to support the
Thank you.
force, okay? All right, thank you.
Chief, I think the money from Night Street will get you over the hill.
That's just messy.
The design has
That's-
started.
I feel like you're picking on me now,
You're
Councilman
gonna have
Green.
Aaron McCarty on the radio.
Yeah, we can't turn around, okay?
I did just want to add on to earlier, I made a comment, and I still stand by the comment, because if someone in my district, and I represent a very diverse district, if someone asks me a question, I'm gonna try to respond to them as best as I can. So I wasn't making a joke when I was asking about the MLK area, because people ask me, well, why did I have to pay a fine? Or why did I have to do, you know, X, Y, Z, and keep my property up when they don't? So when they ask me that, that's my purpose for going that way with it. So to the gentleman that was out here questioning and got upset, then I get out your feelings, because I get in mine too. And I didn't mean nothing bad. I'm just telling like it is.
Sure,
People
we know
ask me.
that. We
No, I want to make sure me and you were clear, and that everybody else was clear from where I was
we-
coming from. So that's my issue on
No, but
that.
I respect your response, and that the law.
Right.
The thing that protects me in my capacity and protect my subordinates in their capacity is that you do your job.
Right.
If you did your job, you're not in trouble. Did you deter from your job without the proper authority or authorization, that's when you're in trouble. Sometimes doing your job is not popular.
Right.
Sometimes doing your job causes situations that unavoidable, but doing your job will keep you clear.
That's right.
And you was telling the proper standards guys, okay, where you are, you can be in Broadmoor or Cooper Road, Allendale or Southern Trace, do your job,
That's it.
and it's all good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Fleur, when we get our job with the crossing guard, can we donate a portion back to the city?
Yeah, I think it'd be something like 10%.
Yes, all right.
Hey, one more. I had, and that's, hope the council will allow it to happen. There was Alonzo Sanders, who someone got up and spoke for him, or spoke on his behalf. He thought he was being allotted the time to speak because I think it was number 86, and he didn't put a sheet in, but he's been there since before 3 o'clock. So if he can
Without
speak
objection,
about
Mr.
his.
Chairman, let me speak.
Okay.
I appreciate y'all for letting me speak.
State your name and your address, please.
Okay, Alonzo Sanders, 1019 Pickett Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. I'm currently building a building there, and I wanted to be rezoned back commercial. When I bought it, it was commercial, and that was my intent. This was like 2016, where I filled out the pre-site application. It was something like that, if I can remember. So after being constantly put off, when I came back, it was zoned residential due to the change in the UDC. So I was told I can build a house, which was not really what I wanted, but I didn't know about the process of getting it rezoned. So I went ahead and said, agreed or whatnot, okay, let me go ahead and do this because I've already purchased it. After reading the news article about you can file to get it rezoned, that's what I did. And I went before the board, the MPC board, which the application was denied by Mr. Mauricio Rucker, if I'm saying his name correctly. And the opposing party was Miss Liz Swain. And according to the MPC bylaws, if a member of the board knows a person, this is 11.2 of the Louisiana Revised Statute, Section C, that they should dismiss themselves from the board for that day if that person has any gain out of the situation. And she does, because she's in operation with the Catalyst for Renew of Shreveport, who is planning on building homes in the area, which I've gotten a call from them, and they wanted to see my designs and my plans because they wanted to know what I was building down there. My thing is, I've heard a lot of people speak up here today about the economic enliftment of Shreveport, and I'm constantly trying to do the same thing. I've heard about different budgets and stuff like that, maybe that they can get help from the city. I'm doing this out of my pocket. Those things I don't know. I'm actually spending money that I'm making off of my rental properties, trying to build a dream, not only for me, but people in Shreveport, the people of my family, generations to come. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. I already made a plan on that. My children are going to be raised here. And I believe that this building not only needs to happen for me, but for the areas in that's destitute. Nothing's down there so far as businesses except for Sam Fertitta's, which is a historic building and a restaurant, but I'm thinking I'm building something that's going to be hiring people. Futuristically speaking, I may bring more businesses into that certain area that I'm buying, but right now I know I'm going to hire certain people to be there, and it's going to help out the area. And I have some documents that I actually wanted to submit to the course as well, just in case.
Sir, your time has expired, but will you tell me what business do you plan to open at the site?
Well, right now I was wanting to do a used car lot. Under C3, I would be able to do some. Well, I was told on the C3 I have to file for a special use permit, of course. But if it would please whoever is against me, I can do C3. That way it'll be enclosed and the cars won't be out. I think that was more the problem with the people who opposed me. So,
Well, if you, and I don't know what
Yes.
you've done to this point, but if you'll follow the process for requesting a special use permit or a rezoning, that will come to the council in due course. If there's an-
That's what happened. This is an MPC, this was at the MPC a couple of weeks ago, and it was denied, for the rezoning. And what's happened is until August of 2020, the MPC had offered an extended time for anyone to have rezoning done to revert back to pre-Unified Development Code zoning. And up until this point, every single one of those cases had been allowed without, well, pretty much without any questions asked to some degree. But in this case, one of the issues is that it came forward that Mr. Alonzo, what's your last name? I'm sorry.
Sanders.
Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders, did divulge that he wants to put in the car lot or the enclosed car dealership for used cars. And, the adjacent neighbor, which would be the Fertitta's owners, and then other neighbors from kind of the general vicinity don't believe that it is in, that it conforms to the other uses that are planned for that area. And Liz was speaking as a neighbor as well as the director of the DDA. Now, what was said in the MPC meeting was that this kind of went beyond the precedent, and this was Mr. Curtis Joseph saying this, because they did know what the use was, and the MPC, I think it was a split vote, but the majority felt that this particular use was outside of the scope of what the Unified Development Code and the master plan have in place for that area, which is for it to be like mixed use residence and retail. Y'all still with me? Okay, so that's why they denied it. And I believe that, Mr. Sanders, are you planning on appealing? Is that why you're speaking today?
Yes, I am planning on appealing. If I can make a statement that the only person who came from that area was Mrs. Fertitta. No one else stayed there. Liz doesn't have or own any property over there. She speaks for the downtown development, of course, but no neighbors showed up. No one who owned the property. As a matter of fact, the people in that area who own the land, I have their support, and they've already signed applications as well to get it reverted back to commercial.
If I
What
may,
was the
there
address?
was one adjacent
1019
property, not
Pickett Street.
adjacent, but Thrash Construction, which is on the other side of the interstate, but it's still considered that general radius, did send a letter in support of the denial.
Is this on Fairfield?
Mr. Chairman,
It's just off Fairfield, right there by Fertitta's at Pickett Street.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
you know, the rules have changed. Whenever anybody applies for rezoning, and even if the rezoning is denied, it comes before the
Still come
council.
before the council.
And I believe it's on the agenda now as ordinance 188, which means that the council will have the opportunity to deal with this at the next meeting.
Okay, so I wanted to introduce this before I leave for the record. This is the paperwork showing that Liz Swain worked with Maurice Rucker, and as well as the MPC bylaws, the rules and procedures, of course, that if one of the board members knew someone, they should have recused themselves from that meeting at that point in time. And I feel that there's no mistake that Mr. Rucker was the one who motioned to deny my application. So I want to submit this to the records if I can, and that'll be it until December 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Sandler.
So, Councilwoman, what's your position on this?
In addressing the zoning, I do think that it gets a little problematic to think that we've got an inconsistency in how we're applying that. But at the same time, what I look at is the master plan and the uses that we want for that area. And I do think that this could inhibit some of that usage.
I see.
The other thing that was troubling was that we didn't get enough information about what the value or the enhancements would be to the area to change anyone's mind about the idea of it being a car lot. Like, the idea of having a car lot adjacent downtown doesn't sound good if it's an open thing, but if he's about to create a well-designed architectural monument that has a bunch of beautiful classic cars in it, and he can show us that, then that might change people's minds, but we haven't been presented with that.
Okay. And I mean, over the years, especially last year when Pipes Car Lot came before this body and wanted to put a car lot at the old first, was it Bank One building on 70th at, what is it, Cornell, somewhere in there?
Mm-hmm.
The church directly across, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
They came and they really made a concern expressions, but we found out now that their fears was not, it was the fear of being fear, it's the fear of fear. And sometimes that could be the case. So, not now, Mr. Clark, but at our next meeting, not on the day we're gonna adopt the budget, but the Monday meeting, I would like to get some information regarding the situation, okay? All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Fuller. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Fleury has submitted to our office a document which we have placed on the agenda, and he has requested us to read for the record and the minutes said document, which reads as follows. Notice by Councilman Fleury of intent to move to rescind the previous vote of the City Council on October the 22nd, 2019 on MPC case number 19-301-WFC, reflected in the minutes as of such a meeting as follows. Quote, motion by Councilman Nicholson, second by Councilman Green. Having considered the entire record of this appeal, the parties' written submissions and the arguments of counsel, be it resolved that the decision of the MPC in case number 19-301-WFC is reversed, and the application of Hemphill LLC for the special use permit to construct a telecommunications facility behind the Goodwill Industries location on Jump Run Drive is denied because the applicant has failed to satisfy its burden of establishing the necessity of the telecommunications facility for the reasons stated in the Center for Municipal Solutions report dated October the 16th, 2019, which is attached to the motion. A motion approved by the following vote: ayes, Councilman Bradford, Nicholson, Fleury, and Green; nays, Councilman Butcher and Bowman; out of the chamber, 0; absent, Councilwoman Fuller, and abstention, 0.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman, and to the members of the audience and ones who are viewing, that's about the telecommunications ordinance that we had up on October 22nd.
Okay.
Councilman
I yield to
Bradford.
Councilman Green.
Councilman Green.
Mr. Chair, since they have gone about to file a lawsuit against the city, I would suggest that until this has been done in the court, that we would not take any action, whereas it wouldn't give either party any leverage when it comes to the court's decision. Whereas if we, if the law said we can go back and do it, then that would give one group the opportunity to say, well, the council has rescinded or the council has done whatever. I would ask that until this matter has been finished in the court, that we would not take any action on that. That would just be my request. Yes, sir.
The reason it was filed was to protect them. If this takes place and is reversed and we vote, then the lawsuit will go away. It will be pulled. That is to protect in case this doesn't get done. If you all say that we're not gonna go along and vote this down, and I don't get to re-vote, then the lawsuit is filed.
Well, that's what I was saying, Councilman, because one, if we uphold and give them the monopoly over the whole city to be able to, every week we look around, they're putting up another antenna next to some other folk antenna. I don't think that anybody ought to have that monopoly. I just think that we made a decision, and that decision should stand. And if they win in court, if the courts say something different, that we did what they said, because I don't feel that I act capricious. I act.
The allegation was that you were both arbitrary and
Arbitrary.
capricious, and that I was as well, Councilman Green.
So, I'm from Belcher, so that says, when you say arbitrary ignorant, that's what you say?
I don't know what all they call us, Councilman.
But anyway, I was none of what they said in their deal to the court. I'm none of that. I mean, I don't know law term, but if we got a lawyer up here, and so I think that they mischaracterized me, and Councilman Nicholson, I don't know if you could represent me as to filing a suit against them for saying that I said what I did not say. I voted against it because, so you all can have it clear, so y'all can take it to the court, that I didn't feel that you all should have the monopoly over putting antennas next to other antennas throughout the city. Now, y'all tell the judge that that's what I voted on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. But Councilman Fleur didn't understand the vote.
Well-
That's what I was getting at. So, Councilman Bradford.
And we understand. I mean, certainly, the desire of the councilman, Mr. Councilman Floyd, if I'm correct, you want to reconsider the vote
And it may not.
so that we can vote again. That's your desire.
And it may not change, but at
Okay.
least I will have corrected to where I
Okay.
voted like that.
And
That's
that-
all I'm asking.
No, I agree. I'm saying that
My motion here may fail.
No, listen, I'm not concerned about that, because I support you and your desire. Okay, my question to the attorney at this time, again, we operate by council rules, which give us the opportunity in the meeting in which we are making legislation, at any point before the meeting is adjourned, to reconsider our action. Now, hear me out now, and I'm saying now, if this was something else, if this was to do something that the mayor would execute within the time frame of our rules, with this same opportunity to reconsider will be afforded. So I'm asking the city attorney, since action, I'm tracking James, Councilman Green now. If actions in response to our action is now in motion, where are we in regards to our ability to reconsider something that has created a reaction to our action?
Well, Ms. Cruz.
Can I say one thing?
Oh, yes, Mr. Johnson.
This is not to reconsider, it's to rescind. And Robert's rule makes a distinction. I'm not saying that this is proper or not proper. I'm just saying, when you come to me next time and say, well, he was allowed to reconsider, this is not what this is. This is to rescind. It's a different motion.
So where does this legislation fall once it's rescinded?
Well, his position, Councilman Fleury, would be that if the council votes to rescind this, then the council would have to vote again on the appeal.
Mr. Clerk, I'm hearing you. But if it's rescinded, then does it stay on the agenda as a legislative item?
It would be placed back on the agenda as a
So
legislative.
go through another process, and we couldn't do it today.
No, none of this is to be done today. All of this is to be done on the 10th. December the 10th.
So, going back to my previous concern, if there was some action, not this action, but action within the structure of our city government where we passed legislation and it was executed within the time frame in which it allows, is that subject to this same type of thing?
Well, I can't answer that. The city attorney is researching that, and she may want to comment on that, but
I think Councilman Nixon wants to respond.
Yeah, Councilman Bradford, I appreciate Councilman Green's remarks and yours. And I note that and we've descended into the minutia of Robert's Rules of Order, and I regret that, and I think we should ascend as soon as we can, but that's where we are nonetheless. The rule that allows a motion to rescind to be filed provides in part that the motion is not procedurally proper, cannot be made if something has been done as a result of that vote that the assembly cannot undo, that we cannot undo. In this case, we have been sued. We have suffered a lawsuit from the party that was dissatisfied with our decision. In my view, that is a thing that we cannot undo. And so, regardless of the merits of our previous decision, my position, and I believe Councilman Green's position, is that the motion is not procedurally proper in that it is not allowed by the rule which we are discussing. But that is something that Ms. Creel will have to give us her opinion on, and we'll certainly take that into consideration as a body.
Yeah.
And also, Councilman Fleury, Mr. Chair, is it okay?
Yes.
Also, I have one of these towers right next door to my church. If they get this opportunity, then I stand another opportunity of having another tower next door to my church, which the one that's there now is unbelievably tall.
But you're arguing.
No, I was just letting him
Okay, I
know
was
my
gonna say,
fears.
we're
I'm
arguing
just-
the litigation.
No, I'm just
But
stating
it's
my,
not on your property,
Can
it's
I
on your
just-
neighbor's property.
Can I just make,
it's on my property.
can I just
You
clarify
collecting
something?
money for it. Every time they hit that tower, you get paid.
No, it's on my,
Attorney,
The Lord give it and they take it away.
no,
We're all
I'm
gonna
not
quit.
getting paid for it.
Attorney
You could've been
Creel,
up here 30 minutes ago.
Attorney Creel.
I was just gonna say that our office is looking into it, and we have not been served with the lawsuit as of yet, as of today, and so I'm not in a position to make any additional comments on the issue.
Okay. Well, you said we wasn't gonna act today anyway, right?
Right.
Okay, so
This is just giving notice that at the next meeting.
it was.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Fuller.
Has there not been some discussion with the MPC about correcting or clarifying the policy within the Unified Development Code so that whatever inconsistency exists right now would go away and there would not be that threat? Okay. So Councilman Green, it looks like once this is sorted out, that the Unified Development Code that's allowed this confusion is gonna get clarified so you wouldn't have that threat.
Well, the person that we bought the land from, Councilman Fleur, they got a 100-year deal on it, so, it's just there. Yeah,
But I
I'm just
get
saying,
They
we
still
might
reap
not,
the
you wouldn't
benefits.
have a second one though.
ma'am.
They're clarifying the code so that you wouldn't have to worry about a second one.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, if we got 3 weeks, then I can talk to Mr. Settle and get an opinion from him.
Mr. Perkins. You have any additional communication?
I do, and I know it's 5:40 on a Friday, and everybody is
It's
ready to go.
5:51.
Tell them it's time to go.
Yeah, I completely understand it. But there was a couple things covered in this meeting that I will shortly address, I assure you. And I'm not gonna get on y'all too much because y'all did consolidate 2 council meetings into 1. But the first thing I want to talk about is public safety in our community. This is one that I ran on a platform to make sure that our city was safer, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart considering the neighborhood that I grew up in here in Shreveport and the things that I see and hear about all the time. Every time there's a violent crime in our city, me and Chief Raymond talk about the particular violent crime. We get details. A lot of times if there's a homicide, one of us, both of us might go out to the scene. I've made far too many of those calls. I've sit in far too many living rooms of grieved family members throughout our city. If I could stop it today, I assure you I would. But I am determined to do everything I can to continue to make our city safer. And Councilman, we appreciate you reaching out to us. The chief and I had already reached out to a lot of our law enforcement leadership in the area to assist us in an operation, and oftentimes we don't talk about it very purposefully, to make sure that we're going out and doing everything we can, that we're getting every asset that's out there to go into these communities and make sure that they're safer. I will say that I am still very much dedicated to community-oriented policing. What we've heard today about instances of crime in our city where there are multiple witnesses and we don't get any information at all, we have to fix that. And the way to fix that is for the citizens to trust the police officers and trust the institutions of this city. Me changing a policy and saying community-oriented policing, I can do that overnight, but the culture of our community, changing culture, takes a very long time. So we gotta be patient there. Phase 1 of that is, again, just changing that culture and talking about it in rhetoric and changing policies. Phase 2 of that culture, it is my stern belief of putting our police officers in the neighborhoods with substations. And I still hope that that happens. But on the topic of trust and on the topic of substations, I'll jump over to the topic of the bond proposal. And I'm gonna be quiet about this for some time. I've heard a ton about it, and I'm glad the citizens still are giving us feedback. We always appreciate citizen feedback. But on that topic of the bond proposal, I'll say to Councilman Bradford, stay encouraged. I know you've been in this fight a very long time. You got a very long track record on making sure that our city is better, and I appreciate you for it, and multiple council members as well. And I say to you, stay encouraged, but I also say to the 49% of voters out there to stay encouraged. I want to say to the hundreds of high school students that I spoke to yesterday about the future of our city to stay encouraged. And for all the citizens that believe Shreveport can be better, we need you to stay encouraged. Our citizens look to us as leaders for inspiration, and we can't get down on ourselves because, democracy on one day didn't go in the direction that a lot of people feel that our city needed. I ran on a platform because I didn't like what was going on in government. Now I find myself on the other side of that 11 months later. But I'm just like a lot of those citizens that that didn't have full trust, didn't think the government was going in the right direction. So I understand their sentiments, and I'm going to continue to work on that culture of trust in our community for as long as I sit in this seat. For those of you who want to be more educated, when we go out for other legislations or a future bond, I assure you I will continue to go to you. We went to churches, we went to organizations, we went to community centers. We continually posted on social media. We did low-tech outreach as well. But again, we're going to continue to work for you, and we're going to continue to make sure that Shreveport is doing as best as it possibly can. I hope everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving. I appreciate everybody and love you. Thank you.
All right. I'm sure no council member has any additional communication. And so since there's nothing else, I knew it.
You can go ahead.
I don't have anything else to do.
gonna go check things out. Everything is in order. I might come have a drink.
Should they have lovely mornings?
I promised James